Did you know that building an initial voice agent is actually the easiest part on the whole voice agent setup? The most complex thing comes in when you actually start building a solution that should bring a certain value to a client. And this is where testing comes in. You can get a voice agent out of the box to at least 80% accuracy without much hassle, but everything on top of that is where you really need to understand how your target audience interacts with the agent, how you build it out, and a couple of other things that I'm going to show you in this video. After this, you will understand the importance of voice AI testing. You'll also know one of my favorite tools for testing voice agents, including some extra tips and tricks on how I get the best results for our voice agents using these kind of methods. If you don't know who I am, my name is Yannis and I run a voice AI agency called Integraticus, and we've built voice agents from small businesses up to Fortune 200 companies. And my aim is to equip you with everything you need to build awesome voice agents. Now, to dive right in, the tool we are using today is called Langfuse, and you see it on my screen as well. And it sounds very complex, you might not even understand what it does right out of the box, but let me tell you that it's literally used in our case for voice AI testing. Generally, you can test LLM responses and other things with it and test against certain evaluations, which means nothing else than you basically try to feed in some information and you try to get a response back out of it to understand what actually happened with the data. And if we take a voice agent, for example, a voice agent, as you can imagine, if I speak into it and I stop speaking, this information is being sent to an LLM. The LLM basically does its magic and gives me a response back, right? This is what we usually call a chat completion, for example, if it comes to OpenAI. And it means nothing else that we send in instructions and the AI responds back to us with other instructions or with an answer. And this is the whole magic that is behind the orchestration layer of voice AI. Now, you probably heard of hallucinations, which is something very natural that happens when working with AI, because obviously you need to give really good instructions so that you get a really good outcome from the LLM. So if I, for example, build an agent or an assistant that focuses on customer support, but I ask it if olives are green, and it still answers me, it is obviously something that you don't want, because a normal human would probably not do that. And that means you need to set some sort of guardrails or some sort of instructions or guidelines on what the AI should do and what it shouldn't do. And these instructions are very variable from industry and from solution to solution. So making sure you get this right is very crucial, especially if you want to have a really value-driven voice AI agent. Because in the end, your customers are interacting with it, and if it answers to very weird things or in a way that you probably don't want to, it is always a damage to the brand, because it obviously seems like the customer is taken care of, or maybe even uses it for other things that it's not supposed or intended to. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you identify those cases using Langfuse, for example, to understand what's actually happening inside of your voice agent. And all of this is done in a fairly easy way. But the first thing that I wanted to give you along is what I already mentioned, is that this orchestration layer means nothing else of me communicating with an LLM back and forth, right? And that happens by transcribing my speech, sending it to the LLM, receiving it back, and then having the LLM convert the text to speech so that I listen to something that sounds human but is actually AI. And this little interaction can be literally multiple parts, meaning that there is some sort of smart logic implemented in mostly any kind of orchestration layer that understands when a user stopped talking, right? That might be after a pause, that might be after a certain intent has been reached or semantically has been determined, or based on punctuation. There are tons of methods that we are using to actually identify when a user stops speaking. And at the moment they stop speaking, and it feels for us like, okay, now's the right time to actually say the user finished his side, now we want the response from the AI. In this moment, all we are going to do is we basically send a request to the LLM, which in OpenAI's case, for example, is a chat completion, which then just means that we send in a system prompt, which is usually the assistant system prompt that we defined in Vapi, and we get back an answer based on the history of the conversation that we had, so basically the whole turns that we had in between the voice AI agent and me, and then we get this answer back. And you've probably seen that if we head, for example, here into the Vapi dashboard, and you open an assistant of your choice, you can see that in the under the first message, you have the system prompt. And this system prompt is literally what we use as the brain behind the LLM, right? Or what we instruct the LLM to interact as, and then return us a response. And you can see that we often just start with a persona, then we have instructions, and then we have kind of like a guided way, in this case, on how the AI should follow through. So this is a very basic example on how you could, for example, structure a voice AI agent inside of the system prompt. And given this, you now know that every time you stop speaking, this turn is being sent to the LLM, and the LLM responds based on those constraints and informations and guidelines to give you an answer. And this obviously, as you can imagine, now happens multiple times, because when the AI answers and you start talking again, the AI will answer again and over and over. So it's basically just the principle of you having different turns with AI. I just want to make sure that you really understand this principle, because it becomes really important when we actually look into debugging and understanding the voice AI assistant. And Langfuse itself is a great tool that is, by the way, free and open source, so you can even self-host it if you want to. But it has a lot of features that are really, really beneficial if it comes to understanding why the AI does something weird, so that we understand and we can actually fix it. And in this video, I want to make sure I keep it concise so you actually understand how to use it and the most important things on really debugging voice AI assistants. And this is what they call as well traces. So traces is basically just like a turn that we have inside of a voice assistant. So imagine I stop speaking, it answers. This would basically be a trace, right? So we have one interaction. This could be a trace in our case. And this trace allows us to get insights into what's actually happening within the voice assistant. So what I recommend you to do if you want to try it, and this is usually more than sufficient, create an account on their cloud-hosted version of Langfuse. So you can simply head over to langfuse.com. You go to the app, so you basically log in, and then you will end up at a screen that looks something like this. And here you have a lot of different options, and I don't want to overwhelm you, so we're going to focus on the most important one, which is this one right here. Under tracing, we click on traces, because those traces are literally single phone calls in this case that we can look into and understand what actually happened inside of the phone call. And the great thing about this whole setup, what I'm going to show you now, is that this is all fairly easily implemented in Vapi, because all you need is the API keys of Langfuse that you can then add into your Vapi account. Since we need to connect it with Vapi, let's do that right away, which you can do by going down here on the settings icon, then you go to API keys, and in here you create a new API key that you can copy, and then you head into your Vapi dashboard, go down here on your email, on settings, and in the settings you have integrations, which is right here, and in the integrations you simply scroll nearly to the very end, and there you will find observability providers, and you see Langfuse credential. So what you do is you basically paste your public key in here, you paste your secret key in here, and the host URL, which is basically the URL that is being provided as well when you create an API key. This is the basic setup and literally all you need to do to connect it to Vapi, which means once you have done that and you see the little check marks right here and you've saved it, you are now actually able to see every single call and all of their little turns inside of Langfuse, which gives you extra insights on seeing what and why something happened. And to show you that on an actual example, what I'm going to do is I'll head back to my agent and we're actually going to give it a call. Here we have again the simple customer support agent. You can see it's a Lisa for ShopSmart. And all I'm going to do is I'll just have a call with it now and basically try to talk to it and see if I get a certain outcome that it's not supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'll simply click on Talk to Assistant. We're going to have a quick conversation.
Hey, Lisa here from ShopSmart. Who am I talking to?
Hey, Janis here. I had an issue with my product. Can you please help me with the return?
Hi, Janis. I'm sorry to hear that you're having an issue with your product. I can definitely help you with the return process. I'll note your inquiry and send it to our support team, who will follow up with a callback to assist you further. Is there anything else you'd like to ask or need help with right now?
So as you can see, what happened now is that it basically asked if it can help me and support with thing, and it will basically send the information over to our team members. But that's something that I don't even think is actually in the system prompt. So that alone would already be enough for me to say, oh yeah, why is it actually doing that? We don't even have that feature implemented, so we don't want to offer that feature through the voice AI as well, right? So now it's for me to figure out what I need to adjust inside of the system prompt to actually make it work. And to do that, there are a couple of methods, and obviously Langfuse is going to help us with this by quite a lot. And now, since we had the phone call, let's head over to Langfuse, and you'll see as well now, if I go over here to Langfuse and traces, you'll see that a new row pops up right in here, which is that one up here, and you can see as well a few more information, like the amount of tokens that has been used, so that's basically the price for it, and the latency in between, and a couple of extra things like input, output. Now, what I want you to do is, once you see it in here, and it's basically always sorted by the newest one comes first, and then it basically goes to the last one. And all you need to do is simply click on it, and you'll see now a pop-up appearing where you can see right in here a chat completion. And I noticed that I just did one single turn, but I'd like to show you multiple turns so you really understand it a bit better, because I think it's a visual thing that we want. So I just had another call, and as you can see, we have a new row right here. The reason I wanted to do is so you see exactly that, because now we have multiple chat completions, which stand for all of the turns. So one chat completion is basically one turn, and by being on here, you can see kind of like the last one. But what I want you to do is when you have a phone call and you know, for example, in this phone call something went wrong, that you can, by the way, analyze by multiple ways, but one of them is as well in here, for example, the evaluations, where you can get certain criteria out of it. Or let's, for example, say you store it in a different database and you already see whether or not a call was really successful. You can just match the time of the call or the call ID with the actual call in here, because the trace itself is literally just the call log ID in Vapi, which is awesome. So you always have the match to which of those traces is actually the call log, so you can see exactly which entry you need to open. And that's important because let's, for example, say you see inside of your database or wherever you analyze your calls, which call that there was a call that wasn't that good, where you see, oh yeah, it actually started hallucinating, and you want to understand how to fix that. You literally just take the call ID, you drop it in here, you find the call and you open it up. And now you have every single turn of this conversation. And what I mean by this is if you click, for example, here on the first one, you can now see that the assistant said, hey, Lisa here from ShopSmart. And then I said, hey, Anastasia, which doesn't really make sense at all. But that's apparently what the transcript gave over. I assume it's probably because of the transcript, or it basically understood my name wrong or something like that. But that doesn't matter that much, but it's basically the first interaction. So now if we head to the second one, you can see that I said, hey, Janis here, can you please help me with returning my order? Right? So it understood something, and the AI then basically answered with the following. So it's very easy to see and understand for you. And you'd also see extra metadata, so you can basically see exactly what happened inside of the conversation. And this one, for example, I'm just going to show you quickly as a reference. So here you have the AI answer again, and here you have the user again. So this is basically the chat completion that I triggered on top of my last response, which was awesome, thanks. But the one that was an issue in my case here, for example, or something where I wasn't too happy, is this chat completion right here. Because you can see that it, for example, said that it can help with returns, but I didn't actually define where to mention that inside of the prompt, right? It's kind of the same here. It basically says, a team member will follow up with a callback to assist you further. However, I didn't build in any logic to actually do that. So it's not sending that information anywhere. It's literally just having the call and saying that it's sending it somewhere. So it would be some sort of hallucination. So now what am I going to do if I don't want that? And let's, for example, say that the call was noted and someone will reach back out based on the following number. So basically to create some sort of alternative way of covering those use cases. What I would do is I'd basically try to understand how I can adjust the prompt to make it better and make it work more towards that voice agent to get a better outcome, right? So having this chat completion selected, all I'm going to do is I go up here on playground, and the playground is basically a way where I can now, literally like it says, play around with the prompt and try certain scenarios and see how the outcome looks like. And that is really cool because now I can just adjust the prompt for that specific agent, including all of the history, as you can see here, based on basically everything we said or I said and the assistant said. And I can literally just try to change or test the prompt and see when I get a better outcome. And that is literally a super powerful way. And to do that, all you would need to do is you need to set up here your model. So I have already selected an OpenAI or my OpenAI account. All you would do is you would literally just create a new provider in here. You select the OpenAI version, and you obviously need to add your OpenAI API project key. You can find that inside of your OpenAI account under platform.openai.com. You simply log in there, you get your OpenAI credentials. It's all usage-based, so yes, you pay for the tokens that you generate, but it is usually worth it and only a very few cents if you do a lot of testing with that. So it is definitely worth it if it comes to creating a more powerful and more sophisticated solution. Now, if I click down here on Submit, you will now see that it's generating an output, which looks like that. So you can actually see the answer that it gives. And even in this case, you can see that it's very similar. Our support team will review your return request. So if I don't want that and I want, for example, to do a live transfer, I can, for example, instruct the user right in here and basically give it the tools inside of the voice assistant to do the same thing. Or if I just want to say we're not able to help with return specifically, I can also define that in here. And here we have, for example, the instructions. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just add a new line right here. I basically just manipulate the instruction based on my specific preferences. And just to show you the impact of that, what I would do is I'd, for example, say, if the user has return questions, tell them that you'll transfer them now to a live agent. Literally just a simple prompt. I just added that in to show you the impact of it. And if I click down here now on generating the new response, you now see it says, thank you, Janis. I'll transfer you now to a live agent who can assist you with your return. Which then means I could probably just instruct it now after that to use the transfer call tool to initiate the transfer. And this would look like this. Use the transfer call tool to transfer the user. It's just an extra instruction that I added in brackets, so it kind of tells the AI to use the tool in that case, which obviously also means that if there is a transfer and you don't have a single phone number, which you can set, by the way, up here in the tools as well. So there's predefined functions. And in here, you can set up a forwarding number. It would basically use that one, but you can also do the same with the tools, as you probably know, to have a more sophisticated and robust solution of transferring phone calls. But with all of this, I really hope you get the gist of it. Let's, for example, say I finished testing the voice agent and it's actually working well, or at least it gives it the response that I would like. What I would do in that case, I'd literally just copy that prompt and basically replace the existing one inside of my Vapi assistant to refine it, right? So now I basically just set over here with a copy prompt and I literally just replace the system prompt, which matches that exact value that is inside of the playground right here, because as you can see, this is even labeled as system prompt, so you know it's going to be the exact same one that is being pasted in here. And this way, you can refine your assistants in a better way to get a better outcome and make your assistants more effectively. And now at the very end, I'm going to give you an extra tip along that helps you a lot with understanding why the AI is doing certain things, so you get a better outcome and a better understanding on how the LLM actually works and decides certain things. And this becomes a really, really powerful feature because it saved me literally hours of time of debugging or being in the dark and not understanding why the voice AI doesn't do something. And before diving into it, I want to mention one thing, which is negative prompting, because if you have already built voice AI assistants, and let's, for example, say you get a good outcome, but you see it does a mistake, a lot of people just add an extra line at the end and say, do not do this, do not do that. This is the worst case you can do because it just bloats the prompt and it makes it less accurate over time. Because imagine you fix 20 bugs, you have 20 new lines of extra things that don't necessarily need a line because there was just a different kind of issue in another part of your prompt. So, and rather of you fixing that part, you just add more context to it or more information to it, which just blurs or makes the AI hallucinate even more. And to avoid this, we want to obviously build prompts in a way of understanding how the current system prompt impacts the output, and then try to adjust the current system prompt based on the output without adding extra context or extra information. And this is something that you can use this method I'm going to show you now very, very well for. And it's basically called using reasoning, or also maybe in some case some chain of thought, but I don't want to go too deep into that because it can be a bit more confusing. But what I want to do is I basically want to have AI reason why it does certain things. And it is very hard to do in a voice assistant, obviously, because if you talk to it on the phone, it's very hard to debug. So that's where Langfuse comes in really, really handy. And what I would do in here, for example, I basically try to get a certain extra value out of the LLM's response to understand why it did something. And what I mean by that is, for example, I can define here in our system prompt a separate section where I can say, for example, response format, right? So I'd say response format. And in here, I want it to answer in a certain way. And I'm going to define that with two things. And that one is answered based on user inquiry, right? So this can be a very basic one. This is the one where the AI anyways would usually answer with. But now we just want to add something extra, which is extra reasoning. Add a new sentence, the reasons why you responded with that answer and what makes you think this way. So what I want to do is now I want to basically instruct the AI to answer with extra reasoning based on why it has chosen the previous answer. And that, first of all, sounds like, okay, yeah, maybe you get some infos, but it actually tells you kind of based on its system prompt why it does certain things. And it's not always clear, so I'm going to run you through an exact example. And to make sure I actually get an even better outcome, what I'm going to do here is, as a user, I just say my answer, because we are anyways in the user context, right? So I can even adjust the single user messages. And to get a better outcome now, I'm going to say respond in with your answer, including a sentence of reason. What made you answer this way? So now we basically tell it twice. First in the user to give it a little bit more of forceability, in that case, for example, or to force it more to actually answer with a reason, because sometimes you might not do it, depending on how long or how sophisticated your prompt is. But now if I run that, you'll now see that it should usually just answer with an actual reason. And you can see that right here. It says, I'm transferring you because your process requires a live agent to handle returns directly for your convenience and privacy, which is great. So now let's just remove the line that I initially said so we understand maybe a little bit more on what I mean by that. Boom. I'll just set that one again. And now you can see it says here, I responded this way because you provided your order number and clearly stated that you need help with the return. So I'm moving the process forward as per your guidelines. So what that means is obviously that your guidelines in that case are very, very unclear. So I would literally just edit there. But what I've seen before as well, that sometimes, for example, AI hallucinates because of certain things, and it thinks it can help with something that it cannot help with, even though you, for example, clearly stated in your system prompt you can only help with certain things. But what I, for example, figured out in one of my cases, where it, for example, helped with something that was not even defined in the system prompt, I literally just did the same what I did right now. I added reasoning to the system prompt and then tried to understand how the LLM responded. And it basically said that as its role as a customer support agent, it felt the need of doing that, which means that by defining here, for example, customer support agent, by defining it as a customer support agent, it thought it had the right to answer in a certain way, which wasn't the case otherwise. And that means you can, for example, rephrase those things. Instead of saying customer support agent, you can call it customer support representative, or you represent a customer support employee in company XYZ that has X capabilities. And you can then basically just revamp your prompt and make it better and get less hallucinations. This is the main goal behind this, and basically the whole core of why I say use those kind of tools to actually test things, because it helps you a lot to get things done faster and more professionally, because you finally understand what the LLM actually does. And given this is one of the major features that I wanted to show you. And once you've hooked it up inside of Vapi, you can now literally just monitor all of the calls right in here, right? You can basically just adjust the system prompt, you test things out, and then you can basically replace the one that you already have inside of your assistant of Vapi. Now, I really hope this gives you a better picture of why certain things need to be tested. And these kind of tools are so crucial, because what they actually do is they bring your system from an 80% accuracy up to like a 90, maybe even 95% accuracy if you really leverage things well. So this already alone is a very powerful thing that can tremendously increase the quality of the output of your assistants, and therefore also help you or your clients make more money or get more things done with your voice agents. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or want to share your feedback, you're most welcome to drop me a comment below. I'm reading through all of them. Thank you very much for now, and see you in the next one.